everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm answering the dreaded question, how do I write better descriptions? I say that it's the dreaded question because I never know how to answer this. It gives me similar energy to like the more dreaded question, how do I start? It just feels like so much responsibility. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can give little tips of like how to write chemistry, how to write a sad scene, whatever. Like, I can give little tips that you can implement. For some reason, it's hard. It's not hard, but it's like, for some reason, it's intimidating for me to give overhaul advice like that. Whatever I say is gonna totally, if you apply it, gonna totally change how you write. And that's just scary to me. I obviously like telling people what to do because I'm a Virgo older sister, and clearly you can see by my channel that I like giving advice and I like telling people my opinions on things, clearly. But like, that feels too much. But I did answer the how do I start question in a recent Q&A, so I figured I'm gonna answer the other question. How do I write better descriptions? I think this is something that I did actually struggle with when I was younger too. I feel like a lot of my sentences were just like, I walked into the room, I sat down in the chair. Like, I just felt like I wasn't very good at describing things in a prosy, poetic way that like sounds good, that doesn't sound like cringe or whatever, but that sounds like a writer wrote it. I felt like I just didn't have like a voice, if that makes sense. Like, it just was so boring. And I never knew how to describe something. Like, I was like, I need to describe the sunset, and my sentence would be like, the sunset was beautiful, orange and pink. And it's like, what? And I would just be like, that's so boring. I feel like I've definitely gotten better at that. I really like a lot of my sentences now, and I like a lot of my descriptions now. Not to toot my own horn, but just the knowledge that I have like gotten better, and I trust myself now to describe things. Like, I'm like, if I need to describe something, I know that I have the tools to do it. So I figured I would share my top tips, but like I said, it's just such a hard thing to give advice on because it's so personal. You know, like how you want to describe things, how you want to tell stories. Literally every single writer on the planet does it in a different way. These are just gonna be some things to maybe think about and try out. But really, my number one tip, just always in any tips video at all, is that the only way to get better at things is to practice them. You can watch as many tips videos as you want, you can read craft articles, you can watch writing vlogs, but the only way to improve like a skill like writing is to write. Sort of the same thing as like the only way to improve cooking is to actually cook. You can't improve cooking by watching cooking channel. You can't improve painting by staring at art supplies in the store. Like, you have to actually do it. Writing is like a hands-on thing that you actually have to do. It's not really a thing with rules like math or science or whatever that you could like watch videos on and get better at. It's more like you have to just learn what works and what doesn't. Craft videos and tips videos obviously are very helpful because they give you things to think about next time you go and practice. But you do have to practice. So that's my number one piece of advice, is like, if you are new to writing and you feel like you haven't found your voice yet, that is like so normal. I literally don't think that I found my voice. This probably isn't going to be encouraging, but you can be better than me. I don't think that I found my voice that I really like until probably like 13 years in to writing. But also I started writing when I was 5. So that's probably why it took so long for me. Because then when I turned when I was like 13 or 14, I finally had my own voice. But I feel like it might have something to do with my age. And like, honestly, I feel like my voice and my style and how I describe things and stuff, that's like also a very recent development. Like, I wrote a book 2 years ago, and I feel like my voice has evolved and gotten better in the book that I wrote last year. So it's like, it's just an ever-evolving thing. Don't beat yourself up about it. It takes a really long time to develop a voice that you like and that gets sentences and things across in the way that you imagine it. It takes forever. So don't beat yourself up about it. You really just have to keep practicing and keep writing, and eventually it'll start to click for you. You know what I mean? You'll start to realize, oh, I like doing that, I like doing that, and you'll start to piece it together. But with all that being said, I need to stop rambling and just get into the tips, which are just some things to think about and consider and maybe try out to help you find your style and how you like describing things. My number 1 tip is to use your 5 senses. I love doing this. Start a description with a sensation. Why did I say it like that? If your characters are on the beach and you want to describe how it feels to be on the beach and what the beach looks like, instead of just being like, we were on the beach, sand was under our toes, describe what the ocean breeze feels like on their skin. What does it smell like? The salt air? Maybe they have some food that's next to them. How is that tasting? Like, start with a sense, because that can create a really vivid description and a really vivid sentence for the reader, because the reader can like be like, oh, I've smelled ocean breeze before, or if they haven't, they can imagine it, and it just creates a more immersive description. I would say try to use maybe 1 or 2 senses. Don't use all 5 at once. But that's always a place that I like to start when I'm like when I need to describe something. It's like, let's describe how something in that setting, in that scene feels, how something tastes, you know, looks, obviously, what they hear, what they smell, all of that. I feel like that's a good place to start with creating vivid imagery. My next tip is that everything that you describe has to have a reason for being there. That's kind of hyperbole, but also not really. Like, if you're going to describe your character's bedroom, the color of the walls that you choose, the color of the bedding that you choose, the decorations on the walls that you choose to describe, those all tell the story of who your character is. And then if you're going to describe a restaurant, the color of the walls of the restaurant, the lighting in the restaurant, the atmosphere in the restaurant, that is all going to paint a picture of the character of that restaurant. So you can use description to help you with storytelling. Also, this is kind of along the same lines, but instead of being like, we walked into the cafe, it had a cozy atmosphere. Describe what about it makes it cozy. Like, build off of like you can use descriptions to get across little details and atmospheric details, and like, you know, maybe your character pulls up in their car and you describe what color their car is. That can tell a lot about them, because like, why did they buy that color of car? I mean, you don't have to tell the reader that, but just for you to think about. If they're reading a book, what genre of book are they reading? Because that would tell a lot about them and their interests. Like, when you're picking little details, you can use it actually for storytelling purposes, and you can use it to bulk up your characters and bulk up your world and make it feel more alive with little details that help bring things to life, not to be redundant. My next tip is to make sure that you're describing things the way that your character is seeing them and not just objectively how they are. Unless you're writing in third person, but even then, you do still kind of need to have your character's lens on. I feel like this can help you with descriptions, because you can kind of put your character's eyeballs on. Put yourself in your character's shoes. If I was this character in this situation, how would I be describing things and thinking about things? What things would I notice? What things would I get kind of stuck on? Like, what things would I really go into depth describing, and what kind of things would I just be like, oh, whatever? Because every single person and character is going to think about things in a different way, and that can help you kind of know where to start with descriptions and also write unique descriptions to your character. My next tip is kind of psycho, but you can act out scenes to kind of see how you feel, what you see, what you touch, what you do, and that can just help you with choreographing a scene. I like to do this usually with like conversations, because it's a little easier, in my opinion, to write a scene where there's a lot of movement, because it's like you kind of know how they want to move, and then you just have to figure out how to describe it. But when there's just a conversation, it's like, how do I write good description in between the dialogue? It just feels like it's just all dialogue, but you want to have something else going on. I will quite literally put headphones on and play music and sit there in my room and like either imagine it or act it out loud, the conversation, and like if I was in the conversation, what would I do? Or you can like pretend to be your character and be like, what would my character be doing with their hands? What would they be feeling in this moment? You can kind of put yourself there, and that can help you describe things because you're really putting yourself in the moment. I'm a big proponent of daydreaming when it comes to writing. I just feel like that can bring the world to life in your mind when you sit and think about it, and you maybe pretend that you're in it. Whatever, it's cringe, but it works. I feel like it brings it to life, and then that can help you bring it to life on the page when you have really bulked up what it looks like, what it feels like in your mind. My next tip is to pay attention to what sort of descriptions you like when you're reading. When you are reading, think about, do you like that sentence structure? Do you like how they started that? Do you like how that was being described? Because I feel like some readers prefer lots of description about the world and the setting so they can picture it, and some readers don't like as much because they can just kind of fill in whatever. Some readers like a lot of description about the character's appearance so that they can picture them. Some readers don't. They like to kind of just imagine whatever, or they like to self-insert. Some readers like a lot of dialogue. Some readers don't like a lot of dialogue. And I feel like you can I just feel like the more that you read, you can kind of bulk up your preference, and that can apply to your writing of like what you like. I like books that have really good descriptions of settings and really paint a picture of a setting, and I like books with memorable characters, and I like books that are funny. So I took those things and I applied them to my writing and my description and my voice. So yeah, I get my number one tip alongside you have to practice is you have to read. Then my last and final tip is gonna be a little crazy, and it's gonna be a little hard to describe. I talked about this also in the Q&A that I mentioned at the start of this video. You can go watch that if you want more questions answered. How I like to think of descriptions is I like to picture my scene as if it was a movie or a TV show, whatever, if it was being shot by a camera. How would I want it to be shot? Because I feel like this helps me describe it in a way that's like how I want the reader to picture it if it was a movie playing in their head. There is a whole debate of like books being written like screenplays, but that pretty much just means that it's a lot of dialogue and no action and no description of the setting. You know what I mean? Like it's just written like the author just wants to kind of write a screenplay. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually picture your scene as if it was a scene from a movie. What would be this opening shot, and then like what would you cut to, what would we be panning to, what would we be zooming in on and honing in on? And I feel like that way of thinking helps me know what details to focus on and where to start with. My kind of formula is I like to start really zoomed in my imaginary movie that I'm writing in my head. I like to start really zoomed in on a detail. So let's say my characters are eating ice cream, walking down a boardwalk, because I literally do have scenes like that in my book. We're gonna start really zoomed in on the ice cream dripping down their fingers. And so in the shot, I'm gonna write my strawberry ice cream, whatever, in a more polished, prosy way, but just imagine it. My strawberry ice cream oozes down my fingers, stickiness drying in the droplet's path. Okay, we're starting with that. And then as a reader, you're reading that and you're like, ooh, I can feel that. You know, when ice cream drips on your hand, like, okay, sensation, puts you there. And then we're gonna zoom out and we're gonna show the whole shot. So then I'm gonna go on to describe in the writing, I'm gonna describe what the sky looks like, the sunset, the ocean, the shops on the boardwalk. Like we're gonna describe the boardwalk. And then we're gonna hard cut to the conversation that the characters are having. So then we're hard cutting and we're just gonna jump right in with a dialogue tag. I literally don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of how I like to think about description when I go into it, is how do I want this to play out in their head? Because if I just wrote that same scene as just sort of like what's happening blatantly, objectively, if I wrote like, we walk down the boardwalk, ice cream in hand, underneath the sunset, that's a decent sentence, but I feel like when you start with like, I feel like when you imagine it shot by shot and like how you want your reader to picture it, I just feel like that paints a better picture and it flows. Because they're just gonna be picturing it exactly how you are describing it, and you're describing it to be pictured, if that makes any sense. I don't know if this makes sense. I don't know how to describe it out of my brain. Like, you know what I mean? I just do it. But yeah, basically zoomed in on a little detail, pan out to full picture for setting, cut to conversation. That's kind of my formula for like starting a scene off, and then I just kind of go from there. You could try that if you got anything from that, if that made any sense. I don't know, like I said, it's so hard to get it out of my mind. But yeah, that is all for today's video. I hope this was helpful in some way. I hope you got something out of this. It's sort of abstract to describe how to write description. It's just like, I don't know how to describe it, but hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully you got something to think about. Please comment down below if you have any questions or if you have anything to add, any advice of your own. Please like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a really great day.